The stars beyond the reinforced glass panels of Sentinel Prime shimmered like quiet watchers. The orbital station, a massive ring of metal and sensors, hung motionless above the cold gas giant below. It was the Zark Collective's first line of defense in this sector, an eye that never blinked, a blade that never dulled. Inside the command dome, Overwatch Tyrix stood tall, his dark exosuit humming softly with energy. His long fingers tapped across the control panel with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. The air was cool, precise. No wasted movement, no idle talk. Zark architecture reflected their minds. Cold, ordered, efficient. A red pulse lit the room. Long-range anomaly detected. The system AI spoke, its voice flat and calm. Human signature. One warship. Vector approach from Sol direction. Tyrix's narrow eyes focused on the projection that floated above the console. A single human ship, old class. Its weapons were powered, but its shields were weak. It moved slowly, almost defiantly, toward Sentinel Prime. Only one, Tyrix asked, more to himself than to the AI. Yes, Overwatch. No other contacts detected. Scanning ongoing. The room shifted. Officers looked up from their stations. Even for the Zark, who trained to suppress emotion, there was tension. Tyrix frowned. Put it on main screen. The projection expanded. The human ship, tagged as UES Gideon, drifted silently, its engines warm but not flaring. It broadcasted standard Earth-Navy identifiers. Open, clear, even welcoming. There was no sign of stealth or escort. It was as if someone had thrown a stone at a fortress and waited to see what would happen. Primitive, said Vice Sentinel Karik, standing beside Tyrix. It's bait, must be. Perhaps, Tyrix said. He narrowed his eyes. But bait, for what? Karik adjusted his gauntlet screen. Recommend full activation of defense grid. Destroy it before it gets close. Tyrix didn't respond right away. He studied the image. No human would be foolish enough to attack Sentinel Prime with a single ship. This is either a distraction or a message. He turned and paced slowly toward the center platform. Around him, the control dome tracked the ship's approach, 145,000 kilometers out and closing. On the other side of that distance, far behind the decoy ship, deep in the black void, a hidden fleet waited. Inside her command vessel, the Phantom Wraith, Commander Alara Voss, sat in her captain's chair, arms folded across her chest. The lights were dim. Her bridge crew spoke only in whispers, every movement controlled, every signal shielded by advanced stealth tech years ahead of what the Zark believed Earth capable of. The Gideon, the ship currently on the Zark screens, hadn't housed a crew in over a decade. It was a relic, stripped of anything useful, loaded with signal jammers and broadcast beacons, and sent forward like a ghost in armor. Ilara leaned forward. Status, Lieutenant Maris. Her navigation officer responded. Still no detection, Commander. Zark defenses are focused entirely on the Gideon. Their scan patterns haven't shifted. Good, she said. Hold pattern. Prepare boarding teams. No one moves unless I say. Yes, Commander. She looked out the front viewport, even though it showed nothing but void. Somewhere, beyond the darkness, her enemy watched a ship that didn't matter, waiting for a move that would never come from it. She had learned from the war on Titan. The Zark didn't fear strength. They feared the unknown. This mission wasn't about firepower. It was about tricking a mind built on logic into believing a lie long enough to let the truth strike from the shadows. Back on Sentinel Prime, Tyrix stood in silence. The human ship had just crossed the 100,000 kilometer mark. Still no change in behavior. He turned to Karik. Send 2 scout drones. Visual scan only. No aggressive moves. I want to see inside that ship. Karik frowned. Risky. If it's a trap, then we learn its shape. The drones launched silently, slipping through the void like twin shards of glass. The room watched in silence as they approached the vessel. Minutes passed. One drone transmitted images, empty corridors, silent walls, no life signs, just flickering lights, and old Earth banners still clinging to rusted steel. A shell, Karek muttered. There's no one on board. Tyrix clenched one fist behind his back. The Zark weren't used to games. Every action had purpose. And this was something else. Then where are the humans? He asked softly. No one answered. Prepare full scans of the surrounding region, Tyrix said. Expand our detection radius by 50%. If they're hiding, I want them found. Acknowledged. The AI replied. As lights shifted and the grid extended outward, Tyrix stared at the ghost ship. One human warship. Alone. Open. Moving forward. Why? Far behind, cloaked in silence. Alara Voss watched the enemy react. Now, she whispered. Let them see what they expect to see. And the shadows stayed quiet just a little longer. The bridge of the Phantom Wraith was silent, lit only by dim overhead lights and the soft blue glow of holographic panels. Commander Alara Voss stood in the center of the room, her arms behind her back, eyes fixed on a large tactical display. It showed the position of the decoy ship, Gideon, and the distant outline of Sentinel Prime. Between them was the void, open space filled with nothing but tension and anticipation. The ship hummed around her, a quiet and steady rhythm that matched the calm before a storm. Every crew member moved with precision. There was no need for shouting or urgency. This part of the operation required silence, patience, and focus. Status report, Alara said, her voice steady and low. Lieutenant Maris turned slightly in his chair. Decoy ship continues on course. Zark scouts have entered scanning range. They're inside the hull, transmitting harmless internal data, as programmed. Any changes in enemy behavior? Not yet. Defensive grid holding pattern. No sign they've detected our presence. Alara nodded. That was good. But she knew the Zark were not careless. Overwatch Tyrix had a reputation for caution. He wouldn't trust what he saw for long. The moment he felt a pattern was wrong, he would act. Give me comms with the boarding teams, she ordered. A soft chime sounded. The face of Major Reese, leader of Squad 1, appeared on the nearby display. He wore a black helmet with the visor raised, showing a rough face lined with old battle scars. Behind him, troops in advanced exo-armor checked weapons, adjusted packs, and waited in silence. We're ready, Commander, Reese said. Just say the word. Stay sharp, Alara replied. The moment we decloak, we hit hard and fast. We have 20 minutes of confusion, maybe less. Get in, disable comms, secure the power core. We lose the element of surprise, we lose everything. Reese nodded once. Understood. The screen went dark again. Alara turned and walked toward the viewport. There was nothing to see but black space, but she looked anyway. She always did before a mission like this. 12 years ago, she had fought in the Battle of Titan. It was the bloodiest conflict in human history, a brutal, chaotic clash with the Zark over the Saturnian colonies. She had been a lieutenant then, barely older than the recruits now in her boarding teams. Half her crew had died in the first hour. The rest didn't last much longer. It wasn't strength that saved her. It was the decision to run. She had pulled back her ship, hidden in Titan's shadow, and watched the enemy. Observed, learned. That decision had earned her a court-martial and a second chance. She had used it to study the Zark. And now, she had learned their greatest weakness. Still, they couldn't handle unpredictability. On Sentinel Prime, Overwatch Tyrix stood still as the sensor web expanded. Dozens of drones launched in all directions, scanning with every kind of frequency the Zark knew. Still, they saw only empty space. Carrick approached. Nothing. Not a whisper. The ship is alone. Tyrix didn't respond. He stared at the decoy, his mind working through possibilities. No life signs, no response to hails. The ship moves forward, but too slowly. It's not a damaged vessel, it's deliberate. He narrowed his eyes. Where are the humans? Carrick shrugged, hiding. Or perhaps they think this is some kind of negotiation tactic. Tyrix shook his head. Humans do not negotiate from weakness. They provoke. They mislead. They improvise. And when they act, it's always too late to stop them. Carrick hesitated, then asked, should we strike the vessel? Tyrix didn't answer. Instead, he looked to the main screen again. Double the scans. Begin thermal mapping of nearby sectors. If they're hiding, we'll find them. Back on the Phantom Wraith, Alara sat in the captain's chair. Her fingers tapped lightly against the armrest. She glanced at the time. 7 minutes until deployment. Commander, said Ensign Vale from the engineering console. We've detected minor sensor adjustments from Sentinel Prime. Nothing active, but their coverage is widening. They're getting nervous, Alara said. Good. Still no sign they've spotted us, Vale added. Let's keep it that way. Her AI assistant, a soft-voiced construct named Lumen, spoke through the bridge audio. Enemy detection radius has increased by 22%. Projected safe window remains intact, but narrowing. Understood, Alara said. Tell all fleet captains to begin drift maneuver. Minimum power only. Maintain cloak. Across the void, 5 human stealth ships began a silent approach. No lights, no engines, just soft movement through momentum, like shadows gliding toward a sleeping beast. A small warning light blinked on the nav panel. Alara leaned over. What is that? Maris checked. One of our stealth scouts has a signal echo. Probably just a sensor bounce, but wait. Report. The drive coil on Recon 3 is unstable. It could create a magnetic trace if it doesn't cool fast enough. How long? 3 minutes. Maybe less. Alara stood, voice low but firm. Shut it down completely. Jettison the scout if needed. I will not risk the entire fleet for one ship. Maris nodded and sent the order. Seconds later the issue was resolved. The scout dropped its coil and faded back into the dark. Crisis avoided. Barely. Alara exhaled slowly. That's the last mistake we get to make. She looked once more toward the distant light of Sentinel Prime, still unaware it was being hunted. Her voice was calm but sharp when she spoke. Final countdown begins. 5 minutes. All units hold position. Await my command. The room answered with silence. The storm hadn't started yet, but it was coming. In the command dome of Sentinel Prime, Overwatch Tyrix stood motionless, watching the scans update in real time. The human decoy ship, the Gideon, continued its slow, straight path toward the station. It hadn't changed course. It hadn't responded to signals, and it hadn't powered down. Tyrix's jaw was tight. Something was wrong. It was too perfect. The ship is unmanned, Vice Sentinel Carrick said again. All scans confirm. It's just floating metal. No heat signatures. No biological traces. We've seen everything there is to see. Tyrix shook his head. No, we've seen what they want us to see. He tapped the console, zooming in on the vessel. Humans don't waste resources. They don't send a warship across systems to do nothing. This ship has a purpose. Carrick frowned. We've expanded our sensor net threefold. There's nothing else out there. And yet I feel it, Tyrix said. Something watching us, something waiting. Far beyond the reach of the station's sensors, the real threat drifted silently through the black. The Phantom Wraith led the advance. 5 other stealth-class ships followed behind, each loaded with troops, drones, and weapon pods. They moved without engines, using only gravitational drift and the momentum from earlier burns. Even light couldn't betray them. Inside her command chamber, Commander Alara Voss stood before her officers. They were quiet, alert, and ready. 3 minutes until synchronized deployment. Lumen, the AI, announced. Alara turned to her crew. This is it. We've planned for every second of this moment. The Zark believe we are bold and reckless. Today we show them we are precise. She looked at Lieutenant Maris. Signal the fleet. All units confirm readiness. Maris nodded and tapped his panel. A moment later, 5 green icons lit up on the tactical display. All units ready, Commander. Alara nodded. Begin final positioning. Outside, the stealth fleet adjusted its formation. Slow, delicate bursts shifted their orientation. Each ship lined up its payloads with pinpoint accuracy. Dozens of micropods, each the size of a torpedo, disengaged from their hulls. They floated forward toward Sentinel Prime, invisible and silent, carrying pulse disruptors and hacking tools. Each one was a blade aimed at the heart of Zark technology. Back on Sentinel Prime, Tyrix watched the Gideon pass the 50,000-kilometer mark. Why send a dead ship? He asked again, mostly to himself. Carrick looked unsure. To draw our attention, but if so, toward what? Tyrix didn't answer. His instincts screamed louder than the data. He opened a private channel to the station AI. Override passive scanning. Begin quantum particle sweep. Search for gravity fluctuations, shadow movements, anything that shouldn't be in deep space. Processing, the AI replied. Tyrix leaned forward. I want eyes in every shadow. Alara felt the time pressing in. She watched the countdown shrink on the main display. 0 hours 1 minute and 42 seconds. The first boarding pods were within range now. They would strike 3 key nodes on the station: communications, internal power grid, and the command uplink. She looked across her team. They were calm. No fear, only focus. She opened a direct line to the boarding leaders. Their faces appeared on separate panels. Major Reese, Commander Solon, Sergeant Hava. Final confirmation. Are your teams ready? Each answered with a single firm ready. Alara nodded. The enemy is watching the Gideon. They still don't see us. Your window is tight. 17 minutes from breach to blackout. Once inside, disable everything. No mercy, no hesitation. We are not here for conquest. We are here for silence. She cut the link. On Sentinel Prime, a beep sounded. Overwatch, said the AI. Anomaly detected. Tyrix snapped his attention to the main screen. Explain. Unusual gravitational distortion. Faint. Localized. Moving slowly on the dark side vector of the station. Tyrix's fingers froze in midair. Show me. A small sector lit up. Just a pixel of change. Barely noticeable. But it was something. Reverse image. Sublight filtering. The screen shifted, and for the first time, a faint shape flickered into view. Not one, but several. Ships, Tyrix said. They're here. Carrick stared in shock. They cloaked an entire fleet. Tyrix didn't answer. His eyes narrowed. Sound full alert. Activate grid defense. Ready the interceptors. And destroy that decoy now. Alarm screamed, but it was already too late. The first pods struck Sentinel Prime. There was no sound, no flash, just impact, and then darkness. One by one, systems on the station went black. External sensors, internal comms, primary relays, lights flickered, backup generators sputtered. Alara watched it all unfold from her command chair. Lumen, she said. Deploy second wave. Begin phase 2. Confirmed, the AI answered. Dozens of jamming satellites launched from the human fleet, surrounding Sentinel Prime in a sphere of silence. Nothing in, nothing out. The Zark defense station had gone blind. Inside the command dome, Tyrix gripped the rail as lights blinked out. His officers moved quickly, restoring manual systems, switching to fallback channels. But the damage was spreading fast. This is no random attack, he said. This is precision. Carrick's voice shook. They planned this for years. Tyrix looked up. The screens were failing one by one. I underestimated them, he said quietly. And then, the final screen went black. On the Phantom Wraith, Alara stared at the dark shape of the once mighty Sentinel Prime. No alarms, no signals, no resistance, only silence. She nodded once. We're in. The silence lasted only seconds. Inside Sentinel Prime, the emergency lights flickered to life in red and amber. The once calm control dome was now a storm of activity. Officers scrambled to restore systems, their hands moving fast across unresponsive consoles. Panels sparked. Displays showed static. Overwatch Tyrix stood in the center of it all, his face carved in stone. But inside, His mind was racing. "They've blinded us," he said. "Full network blackout. Comms, sensors, targeting, gone. Backup channels are not responding either," Karek added, sweat beading on his scaled brow. "Something is jamming us from outside. Possibly from everywhere." Tyrix clenched a fist. "Deploy all interceptors. Manually, if you have to. Get visual eyes on the perimeter. We cannot stay blind." Karek nodded and ran to the auxiliary launch bay. But they were too late again. High above the station, Alara Voss stood inside the Phantom Wraith, surrounded by green-lit displays. The first wave had landed. Her boarding teams were inside. The Zark still didn't know how many ships she had, or where they all were. That was the advantage of control. Strike in silence, and let confusion do the rest. "Report," she said calmly. Lumen responded. "All primary nodes have been compromised. Boarding teams report minimal resistance. Internal security systems disabled. 2 enemy squads neutralized. Casualties, none reported." Alara allowed herself a short breath. Not relief. Not yet. Just a step forward. "Send the signal to Phase 3. Secure the command deck. We end this now." Deep in the halls of Sentinel Prime, the human boarding teams moved like ghosts. Their black armor absorbed light. Their boots made no sound. Armed with pulse rifles and ion cutters, they breached doors with surgical precision. Zark soldiers tried to respond but found their weapons disabled, their communications dead. Some resisted. Most surrendered in confusion. Major Reese led the charge toward the central command hub. A heavy bulkhead blocked the entrance. He raised a hand, and his engineer stepped forward, attaching an explosive charge. The blast was short and sharp. The door fell. Inside, a dozen Zark officers turned in surprise. Some reached for sidearms, others for alarm panels. Neither worked. Reese gave the order. "Drop your weapons. Down now." Most complied. One didn't. A short burst of pulse fire lit the room. The humans took control in less than 20 seconds. Reese activated his comm. Command deck secured. Back in the control dome, Tyrix felt the tremor of the explosion through the floor. He didn't need a report to know what had happened. Karek stumbled back into the room, panting. "Interceptors have launched, but they have no targeting data. They're flying blind." Tyrix stared at the dark screens. No sensor feed, no comms, just echoes of control. "We've already lost," he said quietly. Karek turned to him in disbelief. "You can't mean they've taken the command hub? They'll reach us within minutes." Karek looked toward the emergency panel. "We can detonate the station core. Deny them the win." Tyrik's eyes narrowed. "No, they didn't come to destroy us. They came to take control. If we destroy the station now, we lose more than a battle. We lose the chance to understand their true plan." He stepped forward. "We hold." Karek hesitated, then nodded. Moments later, the door to the dome hissed open. Alara stepped through with 4 soldiers at her side. Her black uniform was unmarked, her helmet under one arm. Her eyes locked onto Tyrix. The room tensed, but she raised a hand. "No one needs to die," she said simply. "This station is now under our control. Stand down, and we won't harm anyone else." Tyrix studied her. Calm, controlled, dangerous. "You knew exactly where to strike," he said. "You planned every detail." "Yes." He stepped toward her. "We saw one ship. That was the mistake." She didn't respond to the accusation, only said, "War taught us not to face you head-on, so we adapted. This isn't about destruction. It's about sending a message." Tyrix tilted his head. "And what message is that?" "That your superiority is not guaranteed. That humans are not a threat to be ignored or pitied. That we will fight, but smarter, not louder." Silence settled again. Then slowly, Tyrix raised both hands in a sign of surrender. "My officers will comply," he said. "But this changes nothing. The Zark will respond." Alara nodded. "They always do." She stepped forward, now standing just a meter away from him. "But this time you'll think twice before underestimating us again." He looked at her for a long moment, and then gave a single, solemn nod. Outside Sentinel Prime, the battle was already over. Zark interceptors, flying without direction, returned to dock. Human stealth ships moved into stable positions, forming a perimeter. The entire station, once a fortress in space, now sat in total silence, occupied, but intact. Inside the Phantom Wraith, Lumen reported the update. All systems secured. All objectives achieved. Enemy command surrendered. Alara returned to her ship hours later, leaving a command team behind to maintain control. As she stepped onto her bridge, her officers turned to her. They didn't cheer. They didn't speak. She gave a simple nod. Well done. Begin Phase 4. We hold this ground. And with that, humanity had taken its first true victory, deep in Zark space. The vast corridors of Sentinel Prime, once echoing with the steady hum of Zark machinery and clipped military orders, now stood in a strange silence. Red emergency lights still pulsed along the walls, but they no longer served as warnings. They were reminders, silent beacons of defeat. Commander Alara Voss walked through the upper deck with deliberate steps. Her black command uniform bore no insignia. She didn't need one. Every Zark soldier who passed her now understood who held authority. She moved with calm control, her presence quiet but absolute. Human soldiers stood guard at every junction, their armor matte and seamless, weapons held low but ready. They didn't speak unless necessary. The mission was clear: hold position, maintain order, and avoid unnecessary conflict. Alara's boots tapped softly against the floor as she entered the central command dome. Overwatch Tyrix stood where she had left him, still tall, still composed, though the weight of defeat pressed against his shoulders. His officers stood nearby, watching cautiously. None had resisted since the surrender. Some out of duty, others out of curiosity. You've restored some systems, Tyrix said as she approached. Lights, internal comms. Minimal functions only, Alara replied. Enough to keep your people safe and to move freely. Tyrix raised a brow. And what do you plan to do with us now? Put us in cages? No, Alara said. This isn't a conquest, it's a message. You'll remain on the station. You'll continue to live here. Work here. We won't interfere, so long as you don't. Tyrix looked at her for a long moment. Strange mercy for a species that lost the war at Titan. We learned from Titan, she said. That's why you're standing here, not drifting in debris. He nodded once, slowly. You chose to disable instead of destroy. That's more dangerous than any weapon. She didn't smile. It was the only way to make you listen. Later that day, Alara entered a smaller chamber, formerly a Zark briefing room, now converted into a temporary human command center. Maps, reports, and transmission logs were spread across the table. Lieutenant Maris stood by the display. We've fully secured levels 1 through 5. No resistance. The Zark personnel have complied with all orders. We're monitoring all activity. Any transmissions? Alara asked. None outbound. Our jammers are holding. Inbound signals are being rerouted and blocked. They can't call for help. Good, she said. But it won't last. Maris nodded. We expect reinforcements within 48 hours, maybe less. Alara placed her hand on the table. We're not staying that long. Maris blinked. We're leaving, she nodded. This wasn't about holding the station permanently. It was about breaking their illusion of security. We show them we can strike anywhere, and leave just as quickly. Maris looked thoughtful. They'll be furious. They'll be cautious, Alara corrected. That's the real victory. As the station settled into an uneasy calm, Tyrix sat alone in his private chamber, staring out at the stars. The battle was over, but the consequences had just begun. He thought of Zark Command, how they would react, how they would punish failure. But more than fear, he felt something deeper. Respect. The humans had done what he never believed possible, not by overwhelming force, but with planning, discipline, and restraint. They hadn't attacked to kill. They had attacked to teach. A chime sounded. The door opened. Alara stepped in. I wanted to see this view, she said, nodding toward the large observation window. The command dome doesn't give it justice. Tyrix remained seated. It's one of the few things the Zark still enjoy in peace, a view of the stars. Alara stood beside him. Maybe that's something we have in common. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then finally said, "You could have ended me." "I still could," she said simply. "But I won't. Because your people will remember that we came here not to erase, but to show you what's possible. The next time we meet, I hope it's not with weapons." He turned to her. "And if it is, then we'll be ready again." They stood in silence, side by side, watching the stars. Two leaders from two very different worlds, momentarily equal. Elsewhere on the station, Major Reese moved among the secured zones. His troops were packing up, preparing for withdrawal. Supply crates were sealed. Drones were collecting sensor logs and jamming devices. They would be gone before the Zark could mount a serious response, but not without leaving a mark. On one bulkhead, someone had painted a small Earth insignia. Nothing large, just enough to be seen. Reese didn't order it removed. Back aboard the Phantom Wraith, Alara returned to her bridge. "All teams reporting in," Lumen said. "Countdown to withdrawal. T-6 hours." Alara looked to her officers. "We've done what we came to do. We disappear before they can stop us. And what message do we leave behind?" Maris asked. Alara turned her eyes to the stars. "That we were here. That we chose precision over destruction. And that next time they won't see us coming either." And somewhere below, Sentinel Prime drifted in quiet defeat. The hangar bays of Sentinel Prime were still, quiet now, except for the faint hum of power being restored, and the steady sound of human boots on Zark metal floors. The boarding teams had completed their objectives. They moved in disciplined formation, packing their gear and weapons, ready to leave as silently as they had arrived. Commander Alara Voss walked through the final inspection alone. Her uniform was unwrinkled, her face calm though exhaustion hid behind her steady eyes. The mission had gone almost perfectly. They had struck the heart of Zark defense and left it stunned. Not destroyed, but shaken, humbled. She entered the command dome one last time. Overwatch Tyrix was there, standing at the central console. He no longer looked like a commander in control. He looked like a man calculating what came next. Still upright, still proud, but quieter now. Alara approached. "We're leaving." Tyrix nodded. "I know your ships have begun to move. You'll regain control of this station by the end of the day," she said. "No sabotage, no traps. Everything is intact. We were never here to break, just to remind." "Of what?" She looked at him. "That humans adapt. That we don't always charge forward. Sometimes we wait in the dark. And sometimes we strike only once." Tyrix didn't speak for a moment. Then he asked, "Why spare us?" "You had the upper hand." She answered honestly. "Because if I destroy you, your people only want revenge. If I show you weakness in your walls, they start asking questions." He almost smiled. "A political strike then?" "No," she said. "A strategic one." Aboard the Phantom Wraith, preparations for withdrawal were nearly complete. Lieutenant Maris oversaw the final upload of collected data, internal maps, Zark power cycles, sensor delays. All of it would be taken back to Earth for analysis. Every second of their time here had been recorded and measured. "All units report ready, Commander." Maris informed Alara through her comlink. "Fleet in position for silent departure. No signs of pursuit." "Begin launch sequence," Alara replied. From the bridge, she watched as the human fleet disengaged from Sentinel Prime. Stealth drives hummed to life. No flashes, no energy spikes. Just a slow and deliberate departure, like shadows slipping back into the night. Below them, the great station began to blink with life again. Zark crews were moving through the corridors, rebooting systems, speaking in low voices filled with confusion and disbelief. Alara stood at the viewport, arms behind her back. "Mission complete," Lumen confirmed softly. She didn't respond immediately. She stared out at the station shrinking behind them. Then finally, "Let's go home." On the outer rim of Sentinel Prime, a young Zark technician, barely of age, found a strange object behind a sealed panel. It was no weapon, no trap, just a data chip, marked only with a symbol, Earth's insignia, and a single line of text translated into Zark script. We see you. We are not finished. He turned it over in his claws, confused. There was no encryption, no virus, only a message. He looked out the viewport and saw nothing but stars. Back on Earth, weeks later, Alara Voss stood in front of a high council of military and political leaders. She gave her report without drama, no boasting, no exaggeration. She spoke of precision, timing, and silence. When she finished, a senior general asked, "Do you believe they will retaliate?" "They might," she said. "But they'll hesitate first. Then what happens?" Alara looked at him, her voice calm. "Then we're ready for whatever comes next." The room was quiet, no cheers, no debates, just understanding. The war had not ended, but something had changed. Out among the stars, in regions still charted only by explorers and warriors, the name Sentinel Prime had begun to mean something new. No longer just a fortress, no longer invincible. It became a symbol of a battle fought in silence, of a victory without destruction, of a war that had entered a new phase, one of shadows, cunning, and quiet steps. And among the Zark, whispers grew louder. The humans were not as weak as they had seemed. They were watching and waiting.